Hi, I'm JD Park,
I'm TJ Shelley.
and this is One Stop Real Estate. So today we have Jared Fenn on with the podcast with us today. I'm very excited to have him because we have not had a home inspector before. So Jared, thank you for coming on.
You bet.
If you just want to start off with a little intro of who you are, where you service, and just kind of go from there.
You bet. So my name is Jared Fenn. I am with Pillar to Post. I took over Pillar to Post here locally about 18 years ago. So I've been doing this for a little while. Pillar to Post is a franchise, so we're all over North America. So we've got 3 different offices here in Utah, so we cover the whole state. My team, Layton to Manti, so most of the Wasatch Front, but primarily focused on Utah County.
Sweet. So you said you got started 18 years ago. How did you even get into home inspecting? Was it like always a passion for you or?
No, so I grew up in construction. My whole family's in construction. I mean, if you want to go back, I'm seventh generation builder, mason, contractor. So
Okay.
it's in my blood. And came down here, was going to BYU, actually worked at New Skin.
Oh,
And
gotcha.
my brother had just made a ton of money in summer sales and decided to buy a house. And he didn't grow up as much doing construction. He bought an 1890s duplex down in
Ooh,
Provo, and he says, "Hey, Jared, I've got a home inspection on this house I'm buying, so come with me." And so I
nice.
went through, and I didn't know what a home inspection or anything, but I just remember I remember walking away going, "Wow, that was uninformative."
Yeah.
I mean, it was like, here's a 100-year-old house, and it was like, and my brother doesn't know anything. He's young 20-something kid, just. And I just remember like, wow, okay. And so didn't think much about it. A few months later, I was looking in, just trying to find some other side hustle to do, and
Yeah.
looking through business classifieds, and found a home inspection business for sale. And I'm man, if I could do 1 or 2 of those on the weekends,
Yeah.
and so I started looking into it. Turned out it was a franchise. It was a full-time gig. So yeah, I left my desk job, and yeah, took the plunge. So
Nice. And so that company was Pillar to Post that
yep,
you started? So
yeah.
you've been there your entire
Yeah, yeah.
home
Sweet.
So that
inspection
was
career.
a great time to get into real estate, 2007, and yeah. So yeah, then but yeah, stuck through it, and yeah, it was another. He had started it about 3 or 4 years prior, and was planning on moving out of the area, so he was
Gotcha.
looking to sell the
Yeah.
franchise.
Uh,
Do they do trainings or anything, or do you have to get certifications to become an actual home inspector?
So in Utah, so Pillar to Post does have a whole training program and certifications and things that they require. A lot of states are very strict, have licensing and things.
Yeah.
Utah, anyone can be a home inspector. You need a business license, which
Just
there's a few
check.
forms to
Yeah.
fill out. It takes
Yeah.
like 20-30 bucks depending on the city. So yeah, in Utah there is zero regulations, restrictions, licensing, certification, nothing.
Yeah.
If you guys want to be home inspectors, go
They
print
Yeah.
it, go.
Don't pay me to do that.
That's interesting to me. Do you think that they'll change that in Utah at any point or
So in my career, they've tried it 3 times
okay.
and it's never gone through. Basically, what it comes down to is the amount of resources, revenue, and things to fund and manage that sort of program at
Yeah.
the state level. They said you're going to need to probably triple the inspector base.
Gotcha.
So, I mean, yeah, I'm not looking forward to having 3 times the competitors. So I'm not.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
It's not something that I'm. And I saw it. I have a lot of friends in Pillar to Post and in this in home inspectors, and saw it happen in Arizona during my career where they implemented licensing. And at the beginning, it was great. It really weeded out a lot of the competition. But after a few years, it's kind of like real estate. It's where, well, you're a
Yeah.
realtor, he's a realtor. I might as well use my uncle because he's a
Yeah.
realtor. He can help me sell the house. Where just because you're a realtor doesn't mean you really are
No.
very good at your
Network
Yeah.
job.
experience. Yeah. No,
so
that's a fair
so
point.
that's what they started seeing is once it kind of weeded out the riffraff, the people that weren't really serious. Now, okay, well, I go through the schooling, I check the boxes. Now I've got a license. Now I'm just as good as this other guy that checked the boxes 20 years ago.
Right.
And so it makes it, I think, a lot harder for them
Hmm.
where it's a commodity now rather than really researching and trying to find someone that's got a reputation or,
Yeah.
any good
So would you
reviews.
say that Utah, the home inspecting industry in Utah is undersaturated? Like there's not that much competition?
There's a ton of inspectors, and it seems like, especially when it kind of, you see this balance between the construction industry. So as soon as
Yeah.
when construction's big and booming, you get a lot of people like me. It's like, "Oh, I'm just gonna go build houses. I could probably make a lot more. Yeah, I'm gonna go build a few houses."
Yeah.
And then if construction starts to taper off, all of them start flooding the market. And so all of a sudden you have all these, because you have a contractor who's like, well, I don't have any work, but I can go, and so then we start getting undercut because it's like, they'll take $250 to do an inspection versus not having anything.
Yeah.
And I mean, contractors don't always make the best inspectors.
Yeah.
I mean, a contractor knows how to build something correctly. Just because you know how to build something correctly doesn't mean you know how to spot things that were done incorrectly.
Gotcha.
So it's a whole different kind of,
Yeah. Was that a big learning curve for you? Because you said you started out in construction.
It was. I mean, and that's the thing, is a lot of it is just learning as you go, and you go to trainings and you see something. And that's one thing that's nice about being part of Pillar to Post and this network is, I have 3 other franchise owners in the state. I've got, 500 across the country that I'm constantly like, hey, what is this?
Yeah.
Have you ever seen this? We're constantly networking and trying to, just, up the game. I was just talking to one of my employees, because every time I go to a training, every time we go to some conference, we learn new things. It just added like another half dozen items that we need to start looking for. And so it's constant. So there's still things after this many, I think we're over 10,000 inspections, that I still see stuff that I haven't seen before.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of go over the scope of what a home inspection is. Like, what area do you guys cover?
So, and that's a good question, because a lot of people don't really understand. I hear agents all the time go, "Oh, don't worry, the inspector's going to find anything that's wrong." So a good analogy is like when you go into the doctor, you go for a physical. You don't go for a physical and the doctor's going to tell you everything that's wrong with you.
Yeah.
They're going to go through a checklist of things that over time the medical profession has said, okay, if we go through this checklist, we're probably going to catch a majority of issues. And then there's going to be some dialogue. Well, have you found anything else? Or they might look at the results and then they might do further tests. So that's really what a home inspection is. And so that's the other thing too, is when you have an inspector, sometimes people say, well, who's got the most experience on your team? It's really more they're following my process. So it's just like when you go to the doctor, even though the nurses might be doing a lot of it, it's the doctor that's going to kind of help you interpret some of that data. So the home inspection is a lot like that, and a lot of people kind of grasp that concept that we're going through a prescribed checklist. There's going to be things that are within scope, or things that we do and things that we don't. And so some examples is like today. How's the roof look? Well, white. There's going to be limitations in that regard that people need to be aware of. Or we get into a house that we can't test all the outlets because it's cluttered, it's occupied, people are living there, and we can't get to everything. So there is some limitations, but it's kind of another good analogy is I'm going to go buy a used car and I'm going to take it for a test drive.
Right.
Well, how does this handle in the snow? Well, we're buying it in July. I don't know. There's going to be limitations, but you're going to do the best that you can given the the time frame that you can do it in.
Yeah. Right now, today, it's snowing.
Yep.
With the snow and everything like that, does that bring any further limitations of like getting on roofs or things that you can test like more? And I want to get into the nitty gritty of what those limitations are.
Okay. So, where do we start? That's a big question. So, number one, because there's no state standards, so some states have a standard, that inspections follow, just like, realtors will have a, and property man, there's limits and expectations that are set for this is what you will and won't do. And so we have those two, and so for example, our team, we subscribe to ASHI, the American Society of Home Inspectors. We follow their standards of practice. And so that dictates what we will and won't do. So, at the end of the day, if you really want to get to the nitty gritty of what will we and won't we do, it's all outlined in that standards of practice. It's provided with all of our inspections. It goes into, we'll go on the roof if we feel safe, and for my team, that's if it's more than a 7 and 12 pitch, we won't go on the roof. If there's ice on the roof, we won't go on the roof. Crawl spaces, if it's less than, I think it's 20 inches, then we're not going to be crawling through the crawl spaces. So there's parameters and guidelines that those standards set. And those are available, and we give those all to our clients beforehand to say, hey, look, and that's why, part of that process is we send them out, hey, confirm this inspection, sign this agreement, making sure that this is what we're going to give
Yeah.
and we're going to do for you.
Yeah.
Is it so with those standards too? Are there specific data points where on your checklist? How many things are on your checklist? How many items?
Someone
Or does
went
it
through one
vary?
time, said it was like 14 to 1600, but it's
They're crazy. They're
yeah.
long.
I mean, our reports are usually 20 to 60 pages long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
And is that all just standards? Is it ASHI you said?
yeah. So ASHI.
So does ASHI set what the standard checklists are, or just is it almost like OSHA, like this is what's safe, this isn't what's safe for
So like for
inspectors?
example, it'll say like the standard is broken down to the inspector shall inspect
I
this,
see.
this, and then the inspector shall describe. And so there's certain things that we have to report on. So like shall describe
Yeah.
plumbing system. Like what is it? Is it copper? Is it PEX? Is it shall inspect heating equipment? But then it will say, but we're not required to within normal. So like for example, HVAC systems. You have to follow normal operating. So I'm not going and pulling things apart and doing a full inspection that way. I'm hitting it like a homeowner would. I'm turning it up.
Yeah.
Does it heat?
Yeah.
I'm turning it down. Does it cool? If it's wintertime, I can't test the air conditioner. And
Mhm.
so, so we're going through a lot of that. And a lot of our report will kind of walk people through. So it isn't it's not a checklist. I mean, there's a lot of check boxes where it's like, did we inspect it or not? Was there this present or not? But then there's a lot of comments of, hey, I couldn't test the AC. Here's why. Here's some things you should be aware of come
Yeah.
summertime. So we try to, my team, for example, one of our biggest emphasis is we're there to educate. We're not just there to check the boxes.
Yeah.
We're there to help them feel confident with the home that they're buying, which is, a lot of inspectors, it's kind of like, what do you offer? Well, we offer an inspection report. For us, the report is kind of ancillary. For us, it's more about the education, the peace of mind, that experience that they're getting.
Yeah, one of the things that I've liked working with you is you've been willing to hop on a call with the potential buyers to explain and walk through them. I've gotten on a FaceTime call with one of my buyers and walked
Mhm.
through it with you, and it was really cool to see that there was a jacuzzi in this house that we were doing, and you filled the tub all the way up. That's not something that you can do in a normal showing. It's kind of weird if you're there
Yeah.
filling up the tub to see. And so that's kind of a unique value that having a home inspection does is, like you said, you get to do all those things that you can't really do on first sight.
Well, and there's a lot of things that like I go back to that process that we follow, like something will say, hey, call us and say, hey, you missed this. And it's like, well, how do we miss that?
Yeah.
Okay. Like we had one where, like the shower head, they went up to move it and it fell off, and chipped the porcelain.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, so now part of our process is you get in and you angle that over before you turn on the tub,
Yeah.
because we're constantly improving that process because there's so many little things
Yeah.
that, okay, we got to try to capture as
Yeah,
much as
right.
possible.
Mhm.
And so, so we got to fill up the tub. We got to, so sometimes people are like, well, why are you, we want to be there for the whole inspection. We get that a lot. We usually encourage people to come towards the end.
Yeah.
And part of that is because, man, I've got a routine, and you
Yeah.
break up that
Mhm.
routine and I might forget to do that. And that
Yeah.
might be the one that breaks. And
Yeah.
so,
Just out of a professional curiosity, in the circumstances where something is damaged while you guys are doing a home inspection, like the porcelain's chipped, what's the process for that?
So there's a few different liabilities, and that is one thing that, because Utah is not regulated anyway, it is something that if you are looking for an inspector, you want to find out kind of what insurances and things that they have. We have several different insurances. So one is a liability insurance that we carry, and that's really to protect the property. So if we damage
Yeah.
the property while we're there, it protects the seller or the homeowner. The other insurance that is a lot more expensive that not all inspectors carry is errors and omissions. And that's basically, did I do the job you hired me to do? So it's
Yeah.
kind of like a doctor's malpractice insurance.
Gotcha.
You can't sue the doctor because he got sick, but if he was negligent or didn't do what he, the test that he said he was going to do or something like that, screwed up the test, he's liable for that. And so the same thing is, we can't, we're not providing a warranty on a home. So if something breaks, I'm sorry, it broke. but did I check it? The furnace isn't working.
Right.
Great. Well, I turned it on. It kicked on.
It
It's within the
was.
scope. It was working. So
Yeah.
I'm not giving you a warranty, but I did test it. It was working. So we run into those issues. If there is something where it's like, hey, yeah, you missed this, you screwed up. Well, then, yeah, that's where there's insurance. That's where we try to, deal with it. Thankfully, the only time I've really had to deal with insurance is where, yeah, stuff that's just, we had one where a lady wanted to sue the builder because the builder really screwed up. The sewer line wasn't connected under the sewer, so it backed up a
Yeah.
month after she moved in. They hadn't put in the footings correctly. It's all stuff that we couldn't even have found in an inspection anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But we still get drug in the lawsuit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of
And
course.
then the other one that we run into a lot is there's a lot of contractors that are opportunistic. And so they'll go out to a house and, wow, your inspector should have called out that, this plumbing is really bad. Well,
Yeah.
it's a 90-year-old house. It has bad plumbing. It wasn't leaking. No, but it's going to leak. Well,
Yeah.
and then they're like, well, so yeah, I don't know if, yeah, there's a big lawsuit right now with the state with is suing a few of these companies that have gone after and have been targeting people. And so we get those are a lot of the
Yeah.
complaints is, yeah, they said this is totally unsafe. It's like, well, it doesn't meet current code, but that's like buying a used
Yeah.
car that doesn't have airbags. It's
Yeah.
it's not new.
From my understanding, it's outside of your guys' scope of work to say, like, to speculate of what will happen, right? You can always
Right.
give your opinion, but you're not supposed to speculate of what might happen or even, like, say how much it would cost to fix
Yeah.
it, right? Because that's on the buyers to do their research and due
Yeah.
diligence.
So we try to give a little bit of information. We try to kind of categorize like, yeah, this is a pretty significant cost. But yeah, we try not to get held, because especially with the way things have been. And I mean, and what's going to cost you to get a repair done in Alpine or Cottonwood Heights versus, Santaquin, even there's price fluctuations that way. And since we cover such a wide area, so yeah, so we stick away from giving too much, so where I won't say like, yeah, you've got 4 more years left on this roof. I will say, hey, that roof looks like it's about 20 years old and it's a 25-year shingle. So,
Gotcha.
we try to give some objective, rather than speculative.
Yeah, absolutely. TJ was saying that in his real estate transactions, the home inspection has been the most important part of a deal. How often do you see deals fall out because of a home inspection? And on the other side, do you ever see sellers get pre-listing inspections?
Okay, I'm going to try to keep this brief because you just opened up a whole ton.
So, sorry about that.
No, you're good. Those are good questions.
There's a lot to cover.
So on the deal killer, on that a lot of times we're labeled the deal killers. It's how many times, I mean that's a big thing everything's riding on.
Yeah.
And I would say that in my experience that there's a lot of deals that didn't need to die because there was a poor relationship between the inspector and the agent. So that's a big thing that I've been advocating over the last couple of years is there needs to be better communication, better relationships between agents. And so for example, we just had one a couple weeks ago. It was an agent. She's, pretty big agent back east, just moved out here to Utah, is not familiar with some of our building styles. And so there was a lot of things where she was just like, wow, like it was an older 50s house with a crawl space. There was some crack in the foundation that, and just that she was like, this is, she called me luckily, and said, hey, I don't think your employee did this very well. And I explained, no, that's how we do it. That's normal. That's expected. We can go take a look. And so she was able to, luckily she had a good enough professionalism to reach out to me and try to figure it out rather than just, oh man, this inspector didn't know. It ended up that for whatever reason, an engineer was called out, and then an engineer put into his report that he thought there was mold in the crawl space, and it just blew up everything. So now the underwriters are like, we need a full mold test and everything. And so she's calling me, and we were able to work it out. I was able just to write a letter and explain, look, it's in a crawl space. It's not living space. It's on insulation. Mold doesn't grow on insulation. An appraiser isn't really, or an engineer isn't really qualified as a mold professional.
Yeah.
And the underwriter said, yeah, have him put that all in his letterhead and we'll suffice. And so we were able to save the whole deal just by having that relationship and, us saying, yeah, let's, we're not just, like I said, we're not just there to provide a report. We're there to kind of help the client have peace of mind. So that's where I see it. I don't know. It's kind of a roundabout way to try to answer your question is yes, we do kill the deal, but if there's a good relationship, there are some agents out there that, are one of the things that comes up a lot in our reviews is that we're very thorough. Obviously you want a thorough inspection. I always find it interesting where there's some bigger agents and they never use us until a family member decides to buy a house, and now all of a sudden we're doing their family member's inspection. And so there are some inspections, some agents that don't want us to kill the deal, but there are some deals that probably need to die for that particular client.
Yeah.
I remember doing one with newly married, first time home buyers, and they were buying a fourplex. And they were going to become landlords and we were going to move into one, and they just had all these aspirations, and this fourplex was a disaster. And so I'm trying to tell them all the repairs that it needs, and I'm like, okay, so the P-trap, what's a P-trap? Just simple little, it's like you guys have a long road ahead of you learning how to do all this, and you need to do stuff right away. And, so sometimes, sometimes deals will be killed. But the thing is if it's handled right, they're still buying a house. And so the other question, we are starting to see a significant increase in sellers doing inspections, and we've been pushing it a lot. California, I have a buddy down there in the Monterey Bay, and 70% of their inspections are for sellers.
Wow.
So it's shifting in other parts of the countries. And so we're starting to see more and more. We're starting to see more and more listing agents offer that as part of, and that's our standpoint, is it really should be viewed kind of like staging or photography. How many agents did staging 20 years ago? It was kind of like high-end properties, maybe above and beyond. And that's kind of where the seller inspection is. And the whole point is, if that seller inspection, you control the narrative, you control the due diligence. I mean, otherwise, the traditional method is you go under contract and everybody's crossing their fingers until the inspection's done. Why not get that out of the way before it even goes under contract? You get a contract, it's solid. We've seen it really making a big difference on those as-is properties where they know it's just kind of a investor special. And instead of, like we had one up in the foothills, great property, great location. It's one of those that pops up on the MLS that people really want that area. And you look at the price per square foot and it was like under contract immediately. And then they go and look at it and go, oh yeah, this needs like $200,000 worth of work, And so you just tied that up for a week and a half, and now it falls out of contract. Now you're back on the market. And so she was able to do a full inspection, post the inspection on the MLS. So basically don't make an offer unless you see the inspection, because we're not negotiating anything that's in the inspection, and had the offer and everything moved. So we're starting to see more and more sellers. And I think, to me, it's a shift in mindset, but the agents that are doing it reduces all the drama.
Absolutely. I've seen pre-listing appraisals, because that is one of the ones that people get afraid of, is, well, will it appraise for what we're listing it at? Also, it makes my job as an agent easier because I know what my maximum list price is. But additionally, I wanted to circle back to the previous question and just kind of go off of what you were saying with how often it kills the deal, and that it's important to have people know what's on that inspection and what's going to kill the deal. Have you ever had to compete with another home inspector and have to go out again because somebody didn't trust their home inspection, or did someone not trust yours and send out another home inspector?
So I've seen that a few times, and I mean, that's one of the things that's been around a lot. I teach a lot of CE classes, so a lot of agents will reach out to me, especially like on the listing side where the buyer has an inspection. Hey, we think this is a problem. And the listing agent's like, okay, is this really a problem, Jared? I see that a lot with mold testing, for example. So mold testing is one of those things where it's really easy. There's no regulations. An inspector goes and spends a few $100s. They've got the equipment and they can start doing mold testing, but they don't really know anything about it. And no one wants to assume liability. And so, I'm just collecting the sample is what the inspector says. And the lab says, well, we're just reporting the results, and nobody wants to answer, well, is it a problem or not? And so that's one where, we've been doing a lot of mold testing. We've, gone to a lot of training, and we have a lot of resources so we can help answer some of those questions. So in those cases, sometimes we're brought in. There's one that, another situation, underwriter, appraiser noticed a crack in the foundation, and and so they're trying to, and so we get called into that just because a lot of inspectors don't want the liability.
Right.
I've been doing this long enough that I can kind of, speak from experience on some of those things. And again, it's just my opinion. I haven't seen too often where two inspectors get called in. It's usually more the buyer and the seller side don't agree on something.
Gotcha.
And so that's where we often, and that's something I'd encourage. I think more and more agents need to realize that at the end of the day, we're giving you our opinion, that there's not black and white in a lot of these things. And so it would make a lot of sense for agents to have a good relationship with an inspector so they can say, hey, you think about it, how many times do you hear about people going and getting a bad medical diagnosis and saying, I'm going to get another opinion?
Yeah.
Yet they go buy a house that's, they're going to be in for maybe decades. They're putting all their money into it, and they get some bad news and they don't get another opinion. It just, that's the mindset we need to get into, is like, okay, that inspectors, and a good example of that is inspectors have their own biases and baggage that they come to the table with. I had an inspector, and he'd had some very bad experiences in the previous career with galvanized plumbing. So he was over emphatic about how bad galvanized plumbing was whenever he'd do an inspection.
Yeah.
I had my basement flood because a line got clogged. So I remember until I finally wait, look at what I'm doing, is I'd see those rings around the floor drain where it's like, oh, the sewer line's backed up. And I would just this is bad. It's like, wait a minute, I solved the problem. It's not that big of a deal. And so you get these biases. And so sometimes it's not so much that the inspector is wrong. It's just in how it's that bedside manner. How is it portrayed?
So you've mentioned a few times that the seller and the buyer disagree. Is there a misinterpretation from one of them, or what's something that's commonly misinterpreted from inspections?
So from an inspection standpoint, a lot of inspectors are, we're taught we have such a litigious society. So inspectors, on the one hand, I can't say, no, the roof isn't bad. But on the other hand, I need to say that, there are some problems, but I can't speculate. I can't, and so we're in this kind of area where, I need to tell you there's a problem, but it's not my job to tell you how bad it is or how much you should worry. And so that's where you get a lot of, especially newer inspectors, that they're a little more gun shy. And so it's very often just like, oh, you need to talk to a professional. You need to talk to a professional. Well, if my roof is kind of questionable and I call a roofer out, what's he going to tell me? I need a new roof. And so, an example I often give is if I have tires that are getting pretty bald, if I go into the tire shop, they're by law, safety insurance wise, if it's below a certain tread depth, they know I can't service these. You have to get new tires. They'd be foolish to tell you, no, those tires are fine, because that's their business. But at the end of the day, how many people are driving around tires that are probably well beyond their recommended age? And so I like, that's an analogy I like to use with a lot of people, is like, look, you're driving on bald tires. If you're the type that, no, I need to go get new tires right now, then you need a new roof. If you're the type that, like, you know what, I've got a spare, I drive carefully, I'm not going off-roading, we're not going to have a major windstorm or rainstorm, maybe you'll get another couple of years out. And so I try to put things into perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And a good example of that is, if it's close, you can always get a home warranty, and if the home warranty covers it,
right?
There's creative ways to get around some of those things. What's your opinion on new construction?
So here's my spiel on new construction. Let's say you're going to buy a new car, and you've got that car, it's all picked out and ready to go, and the salesman says, hey, you know what, I've got this other car, it's a prototype, it's the only one of its kind, it's about the same price, maybe a little bit more, but no one has it, it's got a ton of new features, and it's a prototype. You know, what's your likelihood to be like, oh yeah, I definitely want that one? You know, we a prototype by its nature means that it's never been really tried and true and tested.
Mhm.
And if people would realize that every brand new home is essentially a prototype because it's never been built by the same people in the same location under the same conditions,
Yeah.
it's a prototype by definition.
Mhm.
And so once people wrap their mind around it, yes, new homes are probably built well, but the inherent nature of a prototype and that many people and
Yeah.
there's things that can go wrong. And so a lot of people will say, yeah, but I've got a 1-year warranty. Yes. And a 1-year warranty will cover 90% of the things that we find on new
Yeah.
inspections of new construction. But if you've ever dealt with that warranty process,
It's rough.
it's rough. It's a hassle. It's,
Yeah. Do you find a lot of things wrong in new construction homes?
I would say that if I were to compare a brand new house to a home that's 5 years old, I would expect to find significantly more problems in a brand new house.
Oh,
Wow.
really?
So
Wow.
your least problematic homes are going to be between 2 and 5 years old,
Yeah.
because
Okay.
within the first 2 years, most of the kinks work out.
Mm-hmm.
After 5 years is when things start wearing down. So that 2 to 5 year, even 2 to 7 year, I mean, if we find anything, it's just because someone ignored it.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
But that new construction, and a lot of times too, it's not so much that it's wrong. It's just like, yeah, it's not wrong, but here's what's going to happen 3 or 4 years from now if you don't do something
Yeah.
about this now. So a lot of it is more
Gotcha.
proactive in our inspections.
Yeah, you have to keep watching in that first few years of owning a brand new home.
Yep.
What are the most common things that you find in a new construction home? Is there a pattern, or does it just vary because there's so many different trades in each home?
It's most of it is like when we find bigger things, it's more of a right hand, left hand. It's the different trades not communicating very well. So it's, hey, yeah, the toilet's supposed to go here, not here. And so they cut through it and they cut through a joist. Okay, well, make sure the framers, the carpenters come back and fix this. And oh, whoops, that never got done.
Yeah.
Or we moved this wall, or we had to redo this. So that's what a lot of it is. Sometimes, you think of these crews that are going through and it's Friday afternoon. Yeah, we'll pick that up on Monday.
Yeah.
And it never got picked up on Monday,
Yeah.
or whatever happened. Or another one that's common is, they insulate the attic. Usually happens early in the process. And then they say that, the home buyer comes in and says, hey, wait a minute, there's supposed to be these can lights that were in this room or above this bathroom is a
Gotcha.
common one. Oh yeah, let's go back. So the electrician goes, moves all the insulation, puts in and rewires it, but no one ever comes back and fixes the insulation. So you got these big gaps of
Gotcha.
insulation. So it's a lot of that kind of stuff. I remember one of the bigger ones we had is the HVAC. There was a squeak in the floor. We went down to look, and well, the main beam that was supporting this big great room, the HVAC, they just like cut the beam in half to run the ducting through, and so it never got So there's big things like that. We had one broken trusses, just stuff that kind of corners that are cut, but usually it's more of a and that's the thing is those big ones, builders don't like a lot of inspectors, but at the end of the day, those bigger ones, if it's found later, the builder is going to either get bad PR or he's going to have to fix it. Where if we find it at that point, he can go after the sub and actually get it taken care of, and it's no money out of his pocket.
Yeah, you'd be surprised with how many people and other agents I've talked to, and I ask their opinion on a builder, and every single one has different opinions of horror stories or things that they don't like, and it's just kind of funny because, like you said, PR is a huge thing, and when it comes back on them a few years later, it's there for sure.
Yeah.
With your guys' package, I know you have 3 different, or is it 3 different
Yeah,
types?
3 different inspection packages.
So what's the difference between them? And what are your recommendations for getting those higher level things, and when would they be an important time to get those?
So the one thing that I try to tell clients is don't think of it as like our inspection, an upgrade, and an upgrade,
Right.
but the middle one really is our inspection. That's the one that, My parents say, hey, we're buying a house in Utah. I need you to go inspect it. That's the one that I'm going to do. That's our inspection. That's what we've always done.
Yeah.
But then we have some people that are like, you know what, I need the bare bones basics. And that's, so it's more like our main inspection. And then you can downgrade to just, we just need the base model, or we want to upgrade. And so the base model is really more like, we're not doing infrared. We're just kind of going through the ASHI standards. We're just giving you the bare minimum.
Yeah.
Where our main inspection, we're using infrared. We're looking at, we do floor plans with our inspections. We get all the information off of the different appliances. And so if there's any recalls that pop up in the next few years, they're going to be alerted to those. And then the top one is more about healthy home. It includes mold testing and air sampling and things like that. That one is really more like, 2-3% of the population. Another advantage is with some like that top one, you get all the other services that we offer a lot more discounted. So if you're planning on doing a sewer scope and a radon and other types of mold testing and termites, if you're planning on doing a lot of these other services that we do, then sometimes with the discounts and everything, that top tier kind of,
we're already there, might as well
right,
get
get a few little extra and so but really that middle one, that's about 60 to 70% of our inspections. It's just that's the main inspection that's going to give you your best bang for your buck.
Gotcha. Is there any new technology that you're excited about, or things that are like just barely coming out that you've tested?
So as far as new tools and equipment, sewer scopes have become way more affordable. Actually just ordered a new one yesterday. Where we have some good professional equipment, but you're about 15 grand for a setup. And we've been trying some out and ordered a new one, and now you're in the 3,000 to 5,000, and it's got better picture quality. It's a lot, and so things in that regard. So that's one thing that we've just seen huge, is sewer scopes. That's a 15-20 grand repair that's not going to be covered by any home warranty or homeowners insurance or anything. And and so we're starting to see that, like right now we're probably at about 30% of our inspections people are including a sewer scope. So that's why I need to get another one, because so that as tool wise, and other technology is we're using a lot with AI. I mean, my team, as far as just being able to look up and research and just analyze a little bit more, we've been playing around, and I think there's a lot moving forward that I think we're going to see a lot of changes with AI. I mean, even being able just to, I hired another inspector. He actually worked for another pillar to post in Oregon, and he's going to be starting with me. And I uploaded, AI is like said, okay, compare our two reports, and AI is able to say, okay, here's how your reports look. Here's what you need to train him on. And so, AI is changing in so many different areas. And I mean, we've even used it where, hey, help me write a comment, and we can upload a picture, and it's helping us write our reports, being a little bit more informative. And so it's going to be interesting to see, where AI, I mean, you're starting to get technology where 5 years ago we were doing the floor plans and the 3D tours, and now people can go around, and you used to have the big Matterport cameras, and it took you hours to do a house. Now you can do that with your phone. You can get a lot of that stuff. And so that's even changing with dimensions. And there's a company that I talked to that they're able now to, they're taking even that, those 360 and it can recognize the type of appliances and start integrating that into the report. Oh, it looks like you've got this model of a Samsung fridge. So, here's the warranty stuff. Oh, here's some recalls. Even just, automating some of our job.
Yeah.
So it's cool to see where things are going.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, thank you for coming on the podcast.
Yeah.
I've soaked in a ton of information. I do have some additional questions for you afterwards. But Jared, thank you for coming.
You bet. It's always good to talk about all this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you guys for listening to the One Stop Real Estate Podcast. The One Stop Real Estate Podcast is a production of Vision Real Estate.
I'm TJ Shelley with First Colony Mortgage, NMLS 1674331, with First Colony Mortgage, company license 3112.